You know, I'm a big fan of Lovecraft, but you know, he was a raging racist. Why do I mention this? Basically, all of Lovecraft's stories have some kind of racism in them. Sometimes it's more overt than others, and some where it's less overt, more covert. Is that the right word? Somewhere where both can be seen is Shadow over Innsmouth, and I'm going to use that today to discuss a topic of whether you can separate art from the artist. First, we need to understand exactly how Lovecraft was racist. What a weird sentence. Lovecraft certainly believed that white people were superior to other races, but it's a matter of breeding, not of colour. So Lovecraft believed in like an idea of purer breeding or good breeding. Just every time I use those, just stick them in the air quotes because I don't like using them, but it's the best way to describe them. So being non-white and of purer or good breeding was better than being of the proverbial sort of white trash. This is demonstrating cool air when a lot of respect is given to Dr. Munoz by our point of view character, and that's because he is a man of good, again air quotes, Hispanic breeding, and this is down to the fact that he still saw himself as sort of pseudo nobility, growing up in a rather large mansion in Rhode Island, as if he was actually an English nobleman. What is important for our saucy boy is racial purity.
I just want to be pure.
This then leads us to an understanding of Shadow over Innsmouth. So what happens? Crash course. Our story begins in the late 1920s. Our main character is breaking a long-held government silence on what went down in July 1927. This event led to bombing raids and attacks on Innsmouth. Our character tells us what he did that month. He was conducting a tour of New England. He has a strong interest in genealogy and, attempting to be as thrifty as possible, learns of a bus from a helpful ticket salesman instead of getting the train, let's say, who gives literally pages of exposition on Innsmouth. Innsmouth is, of course, a stop halfway between where he wants to go, so he's going to stop there and check it out and then carry on later. So ever since the War of 1812, the town has been going downhill. People get older, they seem to come down with a skin disease. There was a plague there in 1846 which killed over 50% of people, and only about 300 or 400 people remained after it. Everyone avoids the place. The ticket clerk says it's probably due to racism, but he is racist, so he can't say he blames them. Wow, Lovecraft. Wow, very overt. Before he goes to Innsmouth, he goes to the library and asks about the town, where he finds a crown with an incredible oceanic design. Not oceanic as in like South Pacific Islanders. It's oceanic as in it looks like it's come from the ocean. And it doesn't fit any known culture. So our protagonist goes to Innsmouth, and it's destroyed. It's a ruin of a city. It's a town that just looks like a mess, and everyone there has this weird look which is called the Innsmouth look. They have bulging eyes and scaly skin. They have huge foreheads. It's a very strange look. The older look worse than the young, so the young kind of start off looking normal, and as they get older they get more and more of the Innsmouth look. So he looks around the town until his adventure leads him to an old drunk man named Zadok Allen. Zadok then tells him the origin of the town. The long and short of it is that a man called Obed Marsh, who's still alive, met some South Sea Islanders. These islanders worshipped Dagon, and this is not the same Dagon as, Mesopotamian myth. It's loosely based on him, but, Lovecraft doesn't understand anything. Doing so gave them a lot of fish. These islanders also breed with another race of humanoid fish that also worship Dagon, called the Deep Ones. This allows them to live forever and keep their big fish hauls. So Marsh and his team then begin trading with the islanders. But then, one day, these islanders are wiped out. They're destroyed. So Marsh thinks of a new way to get these fish. He begins a cult worshipping Dagon, the esoteric order of Dagon. Marsh and his followers then get arrested as they've been sacrificing humans and things like that in order to get large fish hauls. This then angers the Deep Ones, who then raid the village. This explains what happened in 1846, and the survivors now essentially rule the town like a dictatorship. And look at the town now, it's shit. Zadok does tell us more and more about what went on, and there is a lot more to this story. But that's for you to read and find out, or maybe watch Crowing Cockatrice's video after this. He may tell you more. But we have enough here to understand what's going on. Now, before I go on, I just want to say that I really do love and enjoy Lovecraft stories. So please remember that. But they do have really racist themes. Innsmouth was doing fine. It was a thriving town. Then they met these foreigners. And then they took these foreigners' ways. They took their religion. They started interbreeding with another race, a race portrayed as evil. What Lovecraft is attempting to show here is what he believes to be the danger of other races. Non-Christian, non-white, non-Germanic. But more specifically, what Lovecraft really doesn't like is the, again air quotes, poor breeding of mixing races. This story is his attempt to show how the mixing of races is a bad thing. For fuck's sake, Lovecraft, why couldn't you have just been a nice person so I didn't have to do videos like this? This then leads us to our main question. Can we separate art from the artist? There are two main sides to this, really, and you may be surprised to find out that the answers are yes or no. On the yes side, that we can separate the art from the artist, is a French philosopher called Barthes, and in his famous paper, The Death of the Author, he explains that if we don't separate the author from the paper, we constrain it to a single interpretation, and in doing so, we limit ourselves to a full understanding of the paper. Applying this to art, in limiting ourselves to a particular piece of art being controlled in its meaning by the artist, we limit ourselves to a full understanding of the art. So, I should be able to read The Shadow over Innsmouth and enjoy it without necessarily understanding the racism behind it. I can create my own meaning for it and enjoy it that way. On the no side, saying that we can't separate the author from the art, well, to quite a few people, and this is certainly a more popular view at the moment, they believe that you cannot truly understand a piece of work without understanding not only the political and philosophical views of the person who wrote it, but also their personal background. As a pasty little white boy, I mean, I say that like I'm not fat and tan. Anyway, as a white boy growing up in England, it might surprise you to learn that when I've read Asian philosophy, I struggled. But when you understand the cultures that these sprang up in, it does become easier because you have an understanding of the things that came before it and how it's caused the things that came after it. And even with older English pieces, like if you read Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan, it seems strange to want a dictator like that, but in the context of the English Civil War and knowing he was a monarchist, it makes a hell of a lot more sense. This then would mean I would have to understand the racism and maybe even reject the story because of Lovecraft's racism. It seems then obvious that this should be the case, right? Because it helps us to get a full grasp of where we were, what the story is, or the piece of work is, and then where we're going. Understanding different interpretations of a story is fascinating, because understanding different perspectives, it can help us then understand what came before for them and what's going to come after for them. But at the same time, the story was written with an intention. So maybe if we choose not to limit the story to its author, it is important to get a full understanding of the story, and this can only be done by understanding what came before it and what came after it and who the author was. So it seems then that we can have a sort of amalgamation of the two opinions. We can understand Lovecraft's ideas and Lovecraft's story with the context of who Lovecraft was, what he did, what his opinions were, what came before for him, and that will help us understand the story better. But then when someone else comes along and reads the story and is like, no, that's not how I'm understanding it, the way I see it is, that then is their interpretation and it should be enjoyed and it's fascinating, and it also helps us understand where they've come from because they're seeing things that we may not have seen. A rich person and a poor person reading the same story would not understand it in the same way, and that would help us understand their backgrounds. You hear a lot of people talk about Robin Hood, and communists and socialists will say things like, this is great, this is a communist story, because it's redistributing the wealth and taking it away from the rich and giving it to the poor. It's amazing. And then you'll hear capitalists say, what a good story, what a great story, because it's showing about how overtaxation is theft. And of course, neither of those interpretations are what it's actually about. Communism and capitalism weren't even around when Robin Hood was first written. It's ridiculous. But you see then that if we understand where something's come from, it gives us a good understanding of the story, and a thorough understanding of the story and an interpretation of the story lets us know where the reader has come from. It's like a two-way street, and I think that's great. I think that's a really good view. But I mean, they're all good views, to be fair. I mean, to be honest, I never really liked Bartes at uni, but this is simply a third option for you, and I want to know your opinions. Do you think that we can or can't separate the art from the artist, or are you on the fence?
¿Por qué no las dos?
Let me know in the comments down below. This video was made in collaboration with a crowing cockatrice. You should check out his video here on just how possible the Innsmouth folk actually are. He makes great stuff on the possibility of creatures in fiction and mythology. We know each other through the Mythology Multiverse Discord. They do so much for me on there, and I have met so many creators and great people on there. Honestly, I do not do enough to plug this Discord. They deserve more credit than I give them. So please check them out and come and say hi to me and Crowing Cockatrice. And we're on there, so just come on and chat to us. So this has been Lovecraft, Racism, Art and the Artist. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember, if you liked this video, like, comment and subscribe. Ring the bell for notifications and follow my socials in the description. Down there also is my subreddit. My TIL vids is down there if you're on YouTube, and my YouTube if you're on TIL. And as always, I will see you next week, babies. Now, as you may have been aware, I have been very much into the Euros. And we did very well. We lost on penalties in the final. Good job, lads. You did do really well. You did do really well. And Saka, Rashford and Sancho, don't be hard on yourselves. It's tense. It's a hard thing to do. Everyone understands that. Yes, there are some dickheads out there. But you did amazing, lads. And 2022, it's going to come home. Guaranteed. Fucking come on. World Cup, baby. Come on.